Police cars and personnel crowded into a usually quiet neighborhood are a good indication that yet another human being has become a statistic. 87 people came to a violent end in Oklahoma City last year. That's 15 less than 1979, but that year was unusually violent. It's still a far cry from the numbers coming in from places like New York City. They topped our figure by 1,700. There's a lot of speculation of what causes homicide figures to rise: the economy, holidays, hot summers, cold winters. But an Oklahoma City police spokesman says it's all just that, speculation. Homicides that occur during the commission of other crimes make up a small percentage of the whole. This body discovered yesterday in an apartment on North Laird is going down as the city's first murder of 1981. Police say it was probably the result of a domestic dispute. 75 to 80% of the homicides in Oklahoma City are the result of a domestic dispute. Friends or relatives have a disagreement, and before you know it, someone's dead. Police officials say there's no way to prevent this type of homicide. That's up to the individual. And unfortunately, some individuals make the decision to take a life. Ted Brown, Action 4, Police Headquarters.
If you're left-handed and you feel left out, there's a good reason. 9 out of 10 people in this world are right-handed. But there's some good news, Southpaws. Here in Midwest City at the International Bazaar, there's a left-handed store that's right up your alley. The posters lining the walls of this shop remind you some great people were left-handed. The bumper stickers and buttons tell you left-handers today feel they're pretty hot stuff too. The shop's called For Lefties Only.
Well, the right-handed people, when they come by, they say, what a cute idea. And then the left-handed people always say, it's about time that somebody thought of us.
Diane's shop isn't a big place, but it's the only store in Oklahoma catering to lefties. Now, finding customers is no problem, but finding suppliers?
It's just very hard to find items for left-handed people. A lot of it comes from overseas because U.S. manufacturers don't think that there's a need to manufacture the items for us.
You want a left-handed notebook? No sweat. How about a left-handed pair of scissors or a left-handed soup ladle? There's even a book on how to be left-handed.
This way we get it nice.
Diane says her most important service is free. It's called the Left-Handed Wall of Fame. Customers, especially little ones, cover their left palms with ink and in no time are immortalized on the wall. It's important because many kids feel they're the only ones who are left-handed. The Wall of Fame shows them they're not alone. From Midwest City, Mark O'Neill, Action 4.
It's a big job housing more than 300 prisoners in the Oklahoma County Jail, and it's a job that the grand jury thinks could be done better. In its report, the jury said the jail is infested with mice and roaches and an exterminator should be brought in. It also complained about unsanitary conditions. But jail officials say they already have monthly pest control and feel the jury was just inexperienced at how jails operate.
We have about 4 different types of inspections that we have to endure each year, several times a year. And the latest one, for instance, is the state jail inspector who comes by and he looks this jail over from stem to stern. And we got a good report the last time, and we have ever since I've been up here.
After meeting for more than 7 weeks behind that door, the grand jury came out with this jail report. No jail officials say they believe the grand jury was probably well-intentioned. They don't agree with the report and say they're not going to make any changes because of it. Susie Webb, Action 4, County Courthouse.
Kaiser Elementary School got a new lease on life last night.
What was the third thing that happened in the story? Michelle?
School board officials had considered closing Kaiser and 5 other elementary schools because of declining enrollment and a higher cost per pupil than bigger schools. Parents battled to keep the schools open, and the school board had a tough decision. but it voted 4-3 to overrule Superintendent Paysan's recommendation to close the schools. The school board also said no school will be closed because of low enrollment or high cost for the next 4 years.
By making the commitment over the next 4 years to allocate additional resources to those small schools, there are going to be less resources available to do other things. I'm very much committed to try to make the board's decision work, and we'll get on with it starting today.
Kaiser principal Ples Henry says the board's decision turned morale in his school around.
I think it'll be more security and more willingness and eagerness to get in there and work with the children and get the most from the children.
Now that officials at Kaiser Elementary know they're going to be around for 4 more years, they've decided to invest in some new playground equipment, just like the big schools have. Sue Lauer, Action 4 at Kaiser Elementary.
I would very much like to see that.
At 31, Don Nickles is one of the youngest members of the Senate. He comes to Washington with no national political experience. But Oklahoma's new junior senator says he is ready to change the direction of the federal government.
I very strongly believe that we're going to have to work to fight to implement a philosophy of government to protect our freedom and not take it away. And I think that's really been the trend of government for the last, you could say 10 to 15 years, or you could say the last 50 years, is the number one priority of government seems to be to redistribute the wealth instead of protect our freedom. And I think it should be the protection of our country, our personal freedom, economic freedom, religious freedom. And so I hope to be part of the new wave that says, no, we're going to fight to protect that and not have government try and solve all people's problems.
As a member of the new Republican majority in the Senate, Don Nickles will wield power. How much remains to be seen. But it is clear that Don Nickles and others have ushered in a new conservative era in the Congress. Mark Trank for Action 4, Washington, D.C.
So far, the most economically efficient way to dispose of solid waste in Oklahoma City is in landfills like this one behind me at 36th and Sooner Road. There are 2 other landfills in the city area. They'll be full in less than 3 years. What happens to the garbage then?
Well, it's obvious that we're going to continue to generate solid waste, and we're going to have to put it somewhere in an environmentally safe fashion. Presently, it's our estimation that as these landfills fill up, we'll have to go further from the point of generation and find a new fill space and create a new landfill there.
The way the garbage crews operate right now is something like this. Say a crew will pick up the garbage up off the curbs, say up here on the northwest side. Then they have to take it to the nearest landfill site, which in this case is northeast 36th and Sooner Road. That takes time and it costs a lot of money in transportation costs. What would be more economically feasible would be a transfer point, say for instance just north of Lake Hefner. The smaller trucks would dump their loads, they'd be loaded into larger trucks and taken to a processing plant, say down here just south of the National Stockyards. That's exactly what Oklahoma Energy Recovery Incorporated proposes to do. Ted Brown, Action 4.
Facial reconstruction expert Betty Gatliff is what you would call a technical advisor for the television show Quincy. Betty, who is semi-retired, normally works at home, but has taken her talents to Hollywood. She can be given the skull of a person and just with that, can reconstruct what the person whose skull it is should look like by using clay. Betty has been involved with advising production crews for Quincy on how to reconstruct faces the proper way. One of those episodes was seen tonight on Channel 4. She likes the crossover from helping police solve crimes to producers solving TV murders.
It shows law enforcement agencies that something can be done. I've found that in lecturing the various groups in the past few years that very many of the people remember the Quincy show and say they didn't know anything was possible until they saw that. And that's been one of the good things about Quincy. He's shown the public and has shown some law enforcement people some techniques that are being used.
Betty still finds her work rewarding even after all the Hollywood exposure, and she claims to have a souvenir to end all souvenirs. Now, a lot of Oklahomans have autographed footballs, but how many people can claim to have an autographed skull from famous TV stars? Not many. Ed Stewart, Action 4 in Norman.
There wasn't enough room in the Corporation Commission courtroom to hold everyone who wanted to comment on the metered phone rates, and most of those comments were protests.
The million-dollar institutions might be able to pay higher rates, but we can't. And if there's anything to be done, it should be done in favor of those folk who need it most.
The people who object represent the elderly, handicapped, or people with fixed incomes. They see a new phone rate as a threat.
Now, how could I use a major service? That would take all my little salary, my little fixed income.
The Southwestern Bell representative sat patiently through all the protests. They insist that the metered rate would be strictly voluntary and only practical for about 2% of their customers. Others should stay with flat rate service.
But for the few who are out there who make a limited number of calls and would find this as option, as an available means to save some money, or reduce their bill, what we're proposing is to make it available.
This isn't the end of the measured rate controversy. The referee will write a report on everything he's heard today. Then it will be up to the Corporation Commission to accept, reject, or change Southwestern Bell's proposal. Jane Boone, Action 4, the Corporation Commission.
State vehicles have already made the switch to gasohol when they pull up at the pump. They've become gasoholics. The mixture of 90% unleaded and 10% alcohol is expected to reduce dependence on foreign oil, along with the national policy to do the same. But the head of the state's motor pool division says there's an added plus the state gets by making the switch to gasohol.
This alcohol mixture in there had a very cleaning effect to it. So it should keep it cleaner.
Gasohol probably costs the same as regular gasoline, so the real savings comes in reducing dependence on foreign oil. 300 state cars will be helping in that reduction, trying to set an example for other vehicles to do the same. Bella Shaw, Action 4, State Capitol.
Stolen car rings are located down in the Sunbelt states too?
That's true. The cardinal mistake there for that poor soul was she left those children alone, thinking that she was only going to be a short distance away and that she could handle any situation that came up. But there again, that particular type of mistake is made far too often by people going away and leaving children like that unattended. A tragic situation, but one that's very hard to prevent.
two detectives searching about 4.5 blocks from where the child was last seen at 28th and McKinley found the child in the 3200 block of North Florida. She apparently had been out all night. She was found on the front porch of a home on a sofa. She had suffered exposure.
This is some of the best wheat pasture in the central part of the state. Still, it isn't good enough to run cattle on for an extended period of time. Spokesman for the Oklahoma Cattlemen's Association says producers must receive some rain soon on their winter wheat pasture. Jim Orton says a prolonged drought will result in higher beef prices. Some producers like Duran and Darrell Howard of Mulhall are feeding their livestock hay. Darrell says there are several disadvantages to doing this.
Well, labor would be one. The second most important would be the expense, the cost of the hay. You have to buy the hay and the expense of putting it up, machinery and so forth. And also the livestock will not do near as good on hay as what they would on wheat pasture. You can't get anywhere near the gains. Mainly on hay, you're trying to maintain your livestock.
Because some producers are feeding their stock much more hay than usual, and the fact that there isn't much hay because of the drought, it has become a precious commodity.
The supply is real critical here in Oklahoma. The places that I have traveled, we certainly have a shortage of hay, and the price is a lot higher, 3 times as high as it normally is, because of this high demand. From here to the southwest and to Oklahoma, we just do not have the wheat pasture that we normally have, and therefore the people that have maintained are trying to maintain their livestock. Others have sold. We're trying to hold on to ours, hoping that the prices of cattle and sheep will go up this next spring, and we'll take care of this extra expense that we've been out to maintain our herds and flocks through the winter.
The Howards are probably the best-known sheep producers in the state. Duran says the effect of the dry weather is felt more in this area of his business than the others.
I used to brag 10, 15 years ago that I'd feed less than 3 or 4 tons of feed to 600, 700 sheep. I mean hay, because I had good wheat pasture for them. But this past couple of years, it's just getting drier and drier, and we don't know what the future holds, so we don't know where this drought will come to an end or where it's going to continue.
All livestock producers are badly in need of moisture on their pasture land. If they don't get it, not only would it hurt them financially, but consumers too. Len McCain, Action 4 near Mulhall in Logan County.
It's definitely more than an Oklahoma-based ring. All of the suspects, other than the one, are from Oklahoma. But it's an operation that brings narcotics into Oklahoma from Mexico and South America.
The mailroom at the Tax Commission has been a hub of activity. thousands of income tax returns are flowing in daily from people who have already received their W-2 forms and gone ahead and computed their tax returns. Of course, the busiest time for the workers here will be the first or second week in February, but already some progress has been made, and the income tax director is happy about that.
We felt like we did a very good job last year, but because of some redesigned computer programs, we feel like we'll be able to do an even better job this year and get the refunds out even faster.
So here it is, the second week in January, and some people will already be receiving their check from the Tax Commission. Last year, the Commission mailed out over 700,000 refunds out of the more than 1 million tax forms it received. Bella Shaw, Action 4 at the Tax Commission.
Navy recruiting has changed. They used to concentrate on college campuses looking for young officer candidates. But now they're looking in other places for officer material, like here in the Glenbrook Center East.
Recruiters are offering officer commissions to people that are already in business. Those potential officers are usually older than college officer candidates, but the Navy has allowed for the